Now that the deck and the shelter deck have been installed and are in a good state, I can begin the installation of the various and many components that go on the deck. Most of these components are plastic, however there are a few photo-etch replacements. This is primarily for the wave brakes, the cranes, and the cable spools. Since the installation of the plastic parts is very simple, it's just a matter of cutting them off of the sprue, sanding them, and then painting them before gluing them onto the ship, I'm going to start by preparing the photo-etch wave brake, which is a replacement for this rather chunky plastic version. The instructions for the construction of the photo-etch wave brakes is not very detailed. It's basically just a picture and a reference to the photo-etch frets, which you can find these components on. Fortunately, they aren't very complicated, so that should be sufficient for their construction. Quite a nice feature that comes with these wave brakes are these fingers. They are folded over to form the base of the support struts. That's quite nice because it's going to make it a lot easier to ensure that all the support struts are the same height. That will in turn ensure that the wave brake sits level on the deck. One downside of these wave brakes is that they don't have lines etched into the back of them to help ensure that the support struts are standing perfectly vertically. This large forward wave brake is a bit different from the others that I've shown you. It doesn't have those fingers, and there actually are only two areas where you need to install support struts. In the center there are large plastic components that will be installed, but in here, in the middle part of it, there are two support struts that need to be installed, and it's not indicated precisely where those need to go because, unfortunately, as with the other wave brakes, there also aren't any indicators on the back of it. So this is going to be something that's going to have to be quite carefully placed onto the ship for me to get it into its proper alignment. The plastic components that need to be installed on that forward wave brake are D30 and 31. So this is where I will start. I think the most difficult wave brake to construct is going to be the forward one. It is the longest and it has the most bends on it. And it also has to accommodate these plastic parts that came with the kit. When you combine multiple aspects that increase complexity, they tend to compound. All the other wave brakes are simple straight lines. There's no bends on them. It's just a matter of positioning support struts on those fingers. So I'll start with the forward wave brake because it is going to be the most complex one and I want to get it out of the way. While removing these components from the sprue, I noticed that there's quite a lot of flashing. That's a bit disappointing because these are rather simple components and you would expect them to be formed quite easily. So for there to be flashing on components like this is a bit concerning for the rest of the parts in the kit. I suspect flashing is going to be a problem throughout this build. However, the flashing isn't too bad, but it's there on what are very simple components. After cutting them off of the sprue, I file down the excess and remove the flashing, and then finish the surface with 400 grit sandpaper. Next, I remove the photo-etch wave brake from its fret. As you can see, it's got a curve to it, so I need to flatten this out, otherwise it's going to be a continuous fight while I'm working with it. To do that, I place it on my cutting mat and then roll it with the back of my knife. This, if you do it too much, will create a curve in the opposite direction, so you just need to take it slowly and do it only enough to create a flat part. With the wave brake sufficiently flat, I can now start folding it. I'll start by folding the support struts that are attached to the edges of the wave brake. This is quite a nice feature. It does simplify its construction a little bit. Often photo-etch wave brakes don't have any support structures connected to them, and you have to manually attach all of them. As for the folds in the center of the wave brake, I'm not going to be too precise about that now because I'm expecting that the angle on these plastic components will inform the correct shape for the wave brake. So I apply extra thick superglue to one edge of these plastic components and then bring it into contact with the wave brake and bend the photo-etch wave brake to conform to the shape of the plastic component. By keeping both the photo-etch wave brake and the plastic component on the table, I ensure that the components are both level in respect to each other. Once the second edge of the block is in contact with the wave brake, I then apply extra thick superglue to bond it in place. I then repeat the process for the other side of the wave brake. Now that I have the general shape of the wave brake, I can do a test fit on the model to make sure that everything lines up, and unfortunately it doesn't. The angles for the legs that stick out on the side are too wide. I can't narrow it because the plastic blocks prevent that, and if I try and squeeze the legs together, it causes the central portion of the wave brake to bow. This is not good. This is not going to work. I'm going to have to redo this. So remove the plastic blocks and now position the wave brake without anything attached to it onto the model using the lines etched into the deck as a guide for its shape. Once I'm happy with the shape, I then carefully reapply the plastic block to the wave brake, being sure not to move it. Once the plastic blocks are tacked in place, I remove the wave brake from the model, flip it upside down, and then reinforce the bonds with a lot of extra thick super glue. Now that the blocks are firmly bonded in place, I can do another test fit, and this time it aligns properly. However, there are some large gaps that can be seen, and those are going to need to be filled. But before I do that, I'm going to attach the support struts. So I tape the wave brake to the deck to make sure that it doesn't move and to keep everything in good alignment. And then I use the etched markings on the deck itself to position these struts. Fortunately, there are only 2 struts that need to be positioned, so this is not too tedious. However, I would have much preferred it if FlyHawk had etched lines onto the back of the wave brake to help guide the location for these struts. To install the struts, I apply extra thick super glue to the side of the strut and then apply it to the wave brake in the correct location, as indicated by the lines on the deck. Once tacked in place, I then reinforce the bond with extra thin super glue. The tape can then be removed and the wave brake can be removed from the ship. When installing these plastic blocks, I did use a lot of extra thick super glue because there was some rather large gaps between the plastic and the photo-etch. So I sand that down to get a clean finish. However, it's not enough despite the excess, and there are still some gaps that need to be filled. So I fill that using Trumpeter plastic putty. While the putty dries, I will work on the other wave brakes. These 2 wave brakes are for the port and starboard sides of the inner aft wave brake. Once again, these components are slightly curved and need to be flattened out before I work with them. And they've also provided an attached support strut at the end again, which is quite nice and appreciated. While these wave brakes also don't have a line that is etched into the back of them to indicate where the support strut should go, they do have these fingers which help align the base of the support struts. I think if I'd have to have one of them, now that I've experienced what these fingers are like, I would choose to have the fingers over the line etched into the back, because it just helps improve the strength of the wave braking and ensure that it sits flat on the deck. But I would prefer to have both. I don't think there's much more design effort in putting an etched line on the back of these parts, so I don't know why they don't just do that anyway. Regardless, this is what I have to work with, so I'll continue the installation. In this case, I will first attach the support struts to the finger and then align it with the side of the wave brake. This is because I know exactly where the base should be placed on the finger, but I'm not exactly sure where the vertical edge of the support should go. Obviously, I'm trying to make them stand up perfectly vertically, but without a line to guide me, that is a little more difficult to achieve. If I attach it to the base first, that gives me time to align it vertically, and once I've got it into the appropriate position, I can then apply extra thin super glue to bond it in place. Once again, on these wave brakes, there are only 2 support struts that need to be connected. However, there are 2 of them, so in total I need to do 4 at this stage. These fingers really are making this quite easy, so this is not that tedious to achieve. And at this point, none of the support struts are attached on that vertical axis. I'll do that at the end once they're all standing up straight and look consistent. Now that all the struts are in position, I gently squeeze them onto the wave brake and then apply extra thin super glue to the joint line. And then, as always, to make sure this is worked out, I do a test fit on the model and I can see that they align nicely with the etchings on the deck. So this is a success. That's nice. And also do a check on the starboard side of the ship, and it also looks good over there. So that's nice. First time, got it right. Doesn't happen often. Now that the inner sections of both the forward and aft wave brakes are complete, I'll move on to working on the outer sections. There are 4 sections of this type of wave brake, and they are all identical to each other, apart from obviously the mirror symmetry. These wave brakes are almost identical to the inner sections for the aft wave brake. The only difference is that they are slightly smaller and they have an extra support strut. And of course there are 4 of them, so instead of just installing 4 support struts, I now need to install 12. These wave brakes are quite a lot smaller, which does make them a bit trickier to work with. Initially I tried installing support struts while holding the wave brake in my fingers, but that proved to be quite difficult, so I decided to stick the wave brakes to an ice cream tub lid. This made it easier to handle all of the wave brakes and to prevent them from falling over. Once the wave brakes were stuck to the lid, it was actually quite easy to do this installation. While I'm placing the support struts on the wave brakes, you may notice that there are a few gaps between the support struts and the side of the wave brake. This is because there is a slight curve to the metal still, and that's causing them to stand off a bit. And I'm only gluing them to the fingers. I'm not gluing them to the side of the wave brake. Later on, when I pick up these wave brakes and squeeze the wave brake into the support struts on the side, those gaps will close. So while it does look in some cases like there are going to be some very large gaps, those will be closed up in the future. But for now, the only thing to keep in mind when doing this is to ensure that the correct size strut gets placed onto the correct finger. Otherwise, it's going to look very odd with struts outsized or undersized for their location on the wave brake. This video is part of a build series on the HMS hood. If you are enjoying this video and would like to see other videos in the build series, then follow the link to the playlist in the cards above. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer, then feel free to post them in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. Now for the finishing round of glue on the wave brakes, I apply extra thin super glue to the vertical edge with a wire and then gently squeeze the side of the wave brake into the support struts. This closes all of the gaps and ensures a good, strong bond. Once again, it's time for another test fit. These smaller wave brakes also align nicely, as with the intersections of the aft wave brake. By now the putty on the intersection of the forward wave brake should have dried, so that can be cleaned up. To do this, I just use a fine file. In such a small area with light sanding, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to see any scratches. After filing off the excess putty, I then place the wave brake back onto the model and ensure that the fit is still good and that nothing has been moved. And this is where we end. As you can see, the wave brakes all fit perfectly and are ready to be painted before they are installed on the ship. In the next video, I'll be revisiting the hawse pipes. I have, during this process, discovered something about the anchors, and I'm going to need to give them additional attention to make them fit with the photo-etch anchors. If you would like to support this channel or see how this ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.